Dust coiled in the canyon's breathless air, swirling around jagged rocks like silent specters of a forgotten war. The twin moons of Theta, 5 hung in the sky like twin watchful eyes, casting long shadows over the sandstone cliffs. Beneath them, a kill zone waited, empty to the untrained eye but bristling with death for those who knew what to look for. One of those eyes belonged to Staff Sergeant Reyna Cole, buried beneath layers of native rock and foliage, still as the stone she rested upon. Her breath slowed. Her heartbeat softened. The world beyond her scope disappeared. Only the target remained. In the distance, the Galactic Council's forward command convoy crawled into the canyon. 6 armored walkers flanked by scout drones and a dozen foot soldiers. At their center, a command skiff shimmered with reflective shielding, barely visible even under Theta's sharp moonlight. Reyna's target sat inside. Commander Tharn of the Owner caste, arrogant, calculating, and responsible for the incineration of 3 civilian outposts. His death wouldn't win the war, but it would scream loud enough to echo across the stars. They thought humans feared war. That was the Council's doctrine. Their broadcast loops declared it nightly: humans are soft, ruled by empathy, constrained by conscience. It was a lie they fed their own troops to keep them complacent, a tale that made soldiers lower their guard when they faced earthborn resistance. It had worked for a while. Reyna's gloved finger rested gently along the side of the trigger. Her rifle, a modified X-42 long-range plasma rail, had been stripped of its tags, recoded, and calibrated to punch through Onari shielding. She'd spent 12 days scouting the terrain, timing the patrols, calculating wind variance and magnetic fluctuations. She'd eaten twice. Slept once. She'd waited for this shot longer than most council grunts lived. Inside the command skiff, Tharn leaned forward, speaking to one of his officers. Reyna could read the movement of his mandibles, the arrogant flick of his lower eye ridge. She steadied the scope, aligning the reticle just above the invisible barrier where his head would be once the shield shimmered open for breath cycle intake. She had 5 seconds to fire. 1 shot. Back at Camp Erebus, they'd told her the Council would never send another high commander through this region again. It was too exposed, too raw. That meant this would be her only chance. She'd accepted the mission not for the strategic gain, but for the list she carried. A small, torn photo of her younger sister, Marley, pinned beneath her vest. Marley had volunteered with a relief vessel near Kalayan V. The Council blew it out of orbit without warning. Reyna's finger curled slightly. "Reyna status?" came a whisper through her calm jewels. The only other soul who knew she was out here. Back at the fallback zone, ready with exfil if things turned ugly. "Target in position," she murmured. "You don't have to do this alone." "I'm not," she replied. "She's with me." The command skiff's shield flickered for air intake. In that precise instant, Reyna squeezed. The sound was not a bang but a whisper, a crack of thunder muffled by a desert's breath. The rail shot lanced through air, light, and distance, traveling silently until it struck with precision. The shimmer around the skiff shattered like glass, and Tharn's head disappeared in a red-blue mist. The officer beside him fell backward, screaming in a guttural tone Reyna couldn't hear but felt in her bones. The moment fractured. Soldiers scattered. Drones spun in erratic circles, searching for threats. Screams echoed off canyon walls. The Council's command structure collapsed in 30 seconds of disarray. And in that chaos, Reyna slid her rifle back into its sheath, rolled silently beneath a slab of sandstone, and vanished into the dark with nothing but the empty echo of her shot lingering behind. The carved casing she left behind was deliberate. Polished brass. Hand-etched with a stylized hawk and the number 7, her old unit. A message, not for Tharn, but for every Council soldier watching the footage later. The ghost of Theta, 5, had spoken. Reyna moved without sound. Her boots barely disturbed the sand. Her body screamed from the hours spent motionless, but her mind was electric. She had to reach the fallback point before the drones recalibrated and began sweep protocols. The Council wouldn't leave their embarrassment hanging in the air. They would chase this phantom to the edge of the system if they had to. She crossed 2 ridges under cover of a rising sand squall, dipping into a crevice cut by ancient water channels. There, waiting in the hollow of a collapsed dune pod, was Jules, a wiry tech operative with a fractured past and nerves Reyna had come to rely on. He handed her a canteen without speaking. She took 2 quick sips. "Confirmed?" he asked, eyes scanning the ridgeline. "Confirmed. Tharn's gone. You made the shot." He never saw it coming. For a moment, neither spoke. The storm whipped overhead, but their world remained in the quiet pocket between chaos and legend. Jules handed her a data pad. Satellite scans already showed movement, dozens of blips racing toward the canyon. Too late. She was already gone. "Do you think they'll believe it?" Jules asked. That one woman took out their field commander from 2 clicks away. "They will," Reyna said, slipping the datapad into her pack. "Because they need to." "What do you mean?" "They need a ghost. Something to fear. They won't say it, but they'll feel it. Every time they enter a canyon. Every time a wind shifts." Jules nodded slowly. "And what about us?" "We keep moving." In the sky, the moons had shifted. The light now bent differently across the rocks, forming long shadows that draped over the land like warning signs. The ghost of Theta 5 had marked her first kill, but this wasn't about revenge anymore. Reyna could feel it. Her shot would ripple across the galaxy. It would reach Earth. Resistance fighters would whisper her name. Council officers would rewrite protocol manuals in her image. And somewhere in the sterile halls of the Council's War Command, someone would ask the question none of them dared speak before. What if we're wrong about the humans? Reyna tapped her comm again. "Upload the recording. Target feed only." Jules hesitated. "You sure?" "Send it through the Black Vine. Let them see what a woman raised in fire and war can do." The feed would travel fast, clipped to resistance channels, pass through encrypted nodes. In 24 hours, the entire outer ring would know. And the Council would have to make a choice, acknowledge the kill or cover it up. Either way, they'd already lost. As they moved under the cover of night, Reyna allowed herself a single breath of satisfaction. She didn't smile, didn't celebrate. There were more names on her list. More commanders. More lies to dismantle. But tonight, the myth began. A storm picked up behind them, sweeping across the desert like a wave of ash. Drones shrieked in the distance, scanning wildly, their lights bouncing off nothing but stone and shifting sand. The shot was already legend now. Her name already whispered. And in the silence that followed, Reyna Cole walked farther into the night. The enemy soldier fell, his helmet shattering like brittle glass beneath the bullet's brutal precision. Silence swept over the battlefield. A shocked gasp carried through the communication channels of both factions. For the first time in a century, a Galactic Legion offensive had halted mid-stride. Not from logistical errors or unforeseen resistance, but from a single sniper's shot. A woman. A human. A ghost with a rifle. Colonel Tarsa Velkin, commander of the 14th Legionary Front, stared at the live feed in stunned disbelief. "Confirm that," she hissed to her aide, eyes fixed on the smoking crater where the forward sentinel had stood. "Was that a human?" Lieutenant Garek shifted uncomfortably in his exosuit, thick reptilian fingers tapping across the console. "Confirmed. High-velocity round. No heat trace. Optical signature. Terran make. Female voice detected on pre-shot WhisperNet. U.S. military dialect." Silence again. Tarsa's jaw tightened. "Broadcast the footage. I want the Council to see." Miles below their orbital command, the jungle remained unervingly still. Sergeant Maeve Holloway exhaled and lowered her scope, her heartbeat slowing as her breathing resumed a soldier's cadence. She knew what that shot meant. Not just the elimination of a command scout, it was her declaration. A line drawn in the red clay of Earth's last contested stronghold. "We're exposed now," whispered Corporal Juno Kim, shifting behind her. She cradled the comms pack like a child, already encrypting their next move. "They know what we are. Who we are." "Let them," Maeve said, chambering another round. They wanted a show. Now the galaxy gets one. By nightfall, the footage was everywhere. Replayed, reframed, dissected by analysts and spun by both sides in the information war. Galactic Council media condemned the act as barbarism, unsanctioned violence by an inferior species. But the truth had teeth. The strike was precise, surgical, and irrefutable. Across distant colonies, rebellion kindled behind closed doors. Earth's resistance, scattered and fragmented for years, began to stir with coherence. The footage of Maeve's shot, zoomed in, slowed down, became an anthem in motion. A human woman in a ghillie suit, camouflaged in Earth's red jungle, taking a stand against a power that once laughed at humanity's fear of war. The Council had called them cowards. Now they called her something else. The Ghost of Appalachia. Back at base camp, deep in the ruins of a long-forgotten steel mill, the team reviewed the Council's rebroadcasts. The alien media twisted facts, calling her a desperate extremist, a primitive warmonger. But something unexpected emerged, chatter among the Council's own populations. Not condemnation. Curiosity. Admiration. "They're losing control of the narrative," said Juno, lips twitching at the screen. "We're not just scaring their soldiers. We're inspiring their civilians." Maeve adjusted her rifle, silent for a long moment. "Fear is their weapon," she said finally. "Truth is ours." Colonel Tarsa's next move came quickly. She authorized a public response, a live broadcast to the Council's homeworlds. A message meant to reassert dominance. The feed began with sterile confidence. A stage of light, chromed armor, her face hard and regal under the sharp edge of her ceremonial helm. Behind her stood 5 Council species, representing military power and galactic unity. She spoke with precision, addressing not just soldiers, but citizens across a dozen systems. "A single shot does not win a war," she declared. "Terror is not strength. This human display of defiance is nothing more than the final twitch of a dying species." She paused for effect, waiting for the algorithms to optimize engagement metrics. "They claim victory through assassination. But we are Legion. We are order. And the order will be restored." And then she made a mistake. She challenged her. "To the sniper who dares wear valor as a cloak, come forward. Surrender. Show the galaxy that humans still know their place." That night, Maeve made her own broadcast. The signal was hijacked from a pirate comm station in orbit. Her face, half-shadowed by jungle foliage and war paint, filled the screen. No rank. No medals. Just a sniper, staring down the galaxy. "You say humans fear war," she began, voice quiet. "You're wrong." She let the silence hang before continuing. "We fear losing our children, our cities, our history. But war made us. War is in our bones. We don't fear it. We survive it. We outlast it." Maeve's gaze never flinched. "You mock us from orbit. You call us cowards from behind a podium. But you've never met us in the mud. You've never seen what we become when there's nothing left to lose." She lifted her rifle, not in threat, but reverence. "This weapon isn't fear. It's memory. Every shot fired, every soul defended, it's a reminder of who we are, and what we will never kneel to." Then, with a flicker of static, the feed cut. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. In the days that followed, strange things began to happen. Council recruitment dropped by 17%. Propaganda viewership plummeted. Some Council outposts reported soldiers going AWOL, vanishing into the shadows, rumor claiming they sought Earth, sought the sniper. Her message had broken something deep. A psychological breach where bullets couldn't reach. In the Resistance bunker, Captain Elridge stormed into Maeve's quarters, fury etched in every word. "You went off mission. That broadcast was never approved." She didn't flinch. "It was necessary. You just made yourself a target for every bounty hunter and gunship in orbit." "Good." She looked him dead in the eye. "Let them come. They'll learn the same lesson." Juno stepped into the tense room, holding a transmission. "You might want to hear this," she said. It was a Council soldier. Young. Nervous. speaking through a cracked helmet, face scorched by orbital re-entry. "My name is Zoltren," he said, eyes darting around. "I defected. I saw your shot. Your words. I don't want to be part of this anymore. I'm not the only one." Maeve leaned in, pulse quickening. "How many?" The soldier swallowed. "Dozens. Maybe hundreds. They're hiding. Waiting. They need a signal." She nodded slowly, heart pounding, not from fear, but from possibility. War wasn't about firepower anymore. It was belief. The shot had changed everything, but the broadcast, that had set the galaxy aflame. Captain Elridge finally understood. His fury faded, replaced by something older, hope. "I want your next mission prepped in 6 hours," he said quietly. "You're not just a sniper anymore. You're a symbol." As Maeve left the room, Juno caught up beside her. "Think they'll ever stop underestimating us?" Maeve smiled, dark and determined. "Not if we keep reminding them." Somewhere beyond the stars, in the council chambers cloaked in gold and arrogance, the high legislators watched her transmission on loop. Replayed. Reanalyzed. Reframed again and again to find the weakness they believed must be there. But there was none. Just one woman, her voice low and unshaking, daring the galaxy to look her in the eyes. The tide had shifted, not from an army, but from a voice. And in the darkened corners of the galaxy, 100 other voices stirred, waiting for their turn. A cold wind sliced through the ravaged underbrush, carrying the scent of scorched earth and the copper tang of blood. The jungle that once throbbed with life now pulsed with silence. The trees, twisted and broken, leaned in as if listening. High above, drones buzzed like anxious insects, scanning through thermal filters and sonar sweeps. But none of them caught her. Sergeant Delaney Holt had become the jungle's ghost. Her shoulder ached where a shard of durasteel had grazed her during extraction. The bandage pressed tight against her skin beneath the tactical mesh, but she didn't flinch. She had no time for weakness. The Council's elite were on the ground now, blooded hunters, trained for shadow warfare. They'd dropped the charade of superiority. After her last kill, broadcasted live to billions, they stopped mocking and started sending monsters. She'd already counted 3 squads on the move. Her sensors pinged their patrol routes, and she triangulated their trajectory with the calm of a veteran surgeon. But the moment she stopped, her breath slowed and her mind sharpened. She felt it. Not heard, not saw. Just felt. She was being hunted back. From the treetop, she surveyed the kill zone. Her rifle, a matte black coil gun, rested against her shoulder. Each shot drained her power core by percentages, so she didn't fire unless it mattered. And when it did, it was final. Her face, streaked in mud and dried sweat, was unreadable, but her eyes shimmered with calculation. Below, shadows moved with more caution now. The enemy had adapted. No more careless comms. No more tight formations. They spread like wolves and used silence like a weapon. But what they didn't know, what the Galactic Council still hadn't grasped, was that fear wasn't her enemy. It was hers to command. "Sergeant Holt," came the whisper through the encrypted channel. "Command requests status." She tapped twice on her comlink. Silent acknowledgement. No words. She knew better. Even encrypted, nothing was entirely safe now. She waited. Then she saw him. A council assassin. Tall, armored in chameleon tech that shimmered against the green. His species, something reptilian with optic nodes flaring out from his skull, scanned the trees like a thermal god. But Holt had been trained to be invisible even to gods. She let him pass below her perch, then silently unhooked a motion-triggered mine and left it where his rear patrol would follow. 5 minutes later, a soft crump of detonation rolled through the canopy. No screams. Just sudden silence. That silence told her everything. He was alone now. She tracked him for 20 more minutes, watching how he moved, how he paused. He was good. Not human good, but better than the average council soldier. He moved like a man who had studied death and decided to mirror it. But Delaney was death made flesh. She caught his rhythm. Every 11 steps, he scanned the treetops. Every 20, he pivoted 90 degrees. And every 60 seconds, his head twitched slightly to the left, like a tell. Like he expected something. He was right. She waited for the sun to break just enough through the clouds to cast his shadow long behind him. Her sniper's eye followed the line of his shape stretching across the clearing. She didn't aim for his center. She aimed for his shadow. The crack was a whisper. He fell, but not dead. Not yet. The jungle held its breath. So did she. Blood painted the grass, dark and wet. He rolled, scanning. His visor flickered. The shot had caught his side, not a kill. She cursed inwardly, moved before the return fire stitched the trunk where her head had been seconds earlier. Impressive, he growled through an amplifier, voice dripping disdain and grudging admiration. She slid down the far side of the ridge, low and fast. Her rifle bounced against her chest as she tucked into the vegetation. Sweat clung to her brows. She needed distance. He wouldn't retreat. Not now. Not after being wounded by the woman they claimed was myth. Come on then, his voice echoed. Be the nightmare. I want to see the ghost. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The next half hour was a deadly dance. One hunter bleeding, the other silent as dusk. He laid traps. She set counter-triggers. He burned foliage to flush her out. She circled through the smoke and came within a breath of slitting his throat, but paused when she saw the patch on his chest. It was old. Worn. A badge of the Council's first war against Earth, decades ago. He'd fought before humans were even considered more than primitives. He'd survived that war. And now here he was, bleeding in her jungle. She hesitated a second too long. He pivoted and landed a glancing strike with a vibroblade that slashed her left side. Pain exploded down her ribs, but she shoved it away with a grunt. Their fight became primal. Blades, fists, knees in the mud. She smashed her elbow into his optical node, cracking the lens. He drove a knee into her thigh and tried to spin her into a choke, but she slipped out with brutal precision and drove her knife into his gut, not deep enough to kill, but enough to end the struggle. He dropped. They both collapsed into the moss and dirt, gasping. Not what I expected, he rasped, blood bubbling at his lips. She knelt over him, breath ragged. We never are. He coughed, laughed, then wheezed. You, humans. You're wrong. We weren't mocking, out of malice. We were afraid. Her eyes narrowed. We told ourselves stories to survive you, he said, voice fading. That you couldn't be real. That women like you didn't exist. She leaned in closer, expression unreadable. You're not the ghost, he whispered, a final smile tugging at his lips. You're the reckoning. His last breath came as a sigh. She sat back, silent, covered in mud and blood. The jungle slowly resumed its chorus, cautious at first, then louder. Her comlink chirped once. Target neutralized, she murmured, voice flat. Continue with extraction protocol. Patch the relay. The line clicked, then went silent. High above, a Council satellite rotated in geosynchronous orbit. From that height, it could watch continents shift and oceans rise. But now, its lens trembled. Because the feed from its best assassin, encoded in real time, had just broadcasted everything. The combat. The kill. The confession. The myth of human cowardice was shattered. All across the outer colonies, from mining rigs to military academies, officers froze mid-order. Scientists dropped tools. Civilians stared in awe. Because they'd just seen it, a lone woman, bleeding, fighting, winning. A human sniper who refused to die. In a council war room, somewhere far beyond the edge of Earth's reach, generals leaned forward as the broadcast replayed. One whispered what none dared to say aloud before. They're not afraid of war. Another nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the moment. Holt stood over the assassin. No, he said. War is afraid of them. Back in the jungle, Holt retrieved a data crystal from the assassin's chest unit. It glowed faint blue, full of schematics, routes, reinforcements. She tucked it into her pouch, then stood, rifle in hand. Her blood left a trail behind her, but she didn't slow. She had more hunting to do. And the council had more ghosts to fear. The wind howled across the desolate ridge, dragging with it the sharp sting of ash and the metallic scent of spent ammunition. Smoke curled in the broken sky, remnants of downed vessels and scorched terrain forming a shattered mosaic of what had once been Earth's last hidden sanctuary. Among the wreckage, Sergeant Calla 6 Moreno crouched beneath the twisted frame of a fallen comms tower, her body aching, her sniper rifle, Black Swan, cradled like a limb she could never afford to lose. The silence wasn't peace. It was the breath before a scream. The Council's elite shadows, genetically enhanced and surgically precise, had fallen quiet. But they were still out there, licking their wounds, learning. Calla knew that the next time they came, they wouldn't just be hunting. They'd be erasing. She pressed her back to the steel, her ear catching the hiss of her cracked comms piece. "Echo Team is gone," a garbled voice muttered before cutting to static. She didn't need the confirmation. She'd seen the pulse bombs light up the valley like hell's own fireworks. A dull throb in her side reminded her of the gash from the last skirmish. She had wrapped it tight with torn mesh cloth, but the warmth seeping through was either blood or infection. Time was a narrowing hallway, and she was at the end of it. But she wasn't done. Not until the last bullet was spent. Not until the message got out. "Come on, Swan," she whispered, lifting the rifle and aligning her scope toward the scorched ridge across the clearing. Movement flickered there, an outline too precise to be wind or wild things. Her breath slowed. The world contracted, pulse sinking to the tick of her internal metronome. Her finger hovered over the trigger when the static returned. "This is Captain Reese, Earth Command fallback initiated. Final evac in T-8. Repeat. All remaining forces, converge on LZ Gamma. If you're alive, we're leaving." Calla didn't move. Her finger never squeezed the trigger. Not yet. She glanced at the sky. The orbital relay station was still intact, hanging like a rusted satellite in twilight. If she could get there, if she could transmit the footage, the kills, the truth, they couldn't lie about humans anymore. They couldn't say Earth fell without a fight. And they sure as hell couldn't pretend a woman sniper hadn't shattered their finest ghosts with a rifle and raw fury. A blur darted left of the ridge. She tracked it, exhaled, and fired. The suppressor thudded like a distant heartbeat. Target down. But now they knew where she was. She moved. Calla dropped low, sprinting across the uneven ground, pain flaring with every stride. The relay wasn't far, less than 3 clicks, but in this terrain, it might as well have been Mars. Footsteps echoed behind her. Heavy. Inhuman. She slid behind a boulder just as a plasma bolt shattered a nearby tree into molten bark. One of the elite. Maybe the last. Maybe not. She didn't care. She was tired of hiding. The shadow stepped into view, a tall figure clad in obsidian armor, visor glowing violet, twin plasma blades ignited like twin suns. It scanned, its movements measured and deliberate. Calla waited. She wasn't faster. Not anymore. But she was still smarter. She tossed a flare core over the ridge. The soldier turned. Just a flicker, and she launched from cover, firing a shot that cracked through its shoulder guard. The armor splintered, but the elite didn't fall. It surged forward with unnatural grace, blades hissing. They crashed in a blur. Rifle blocked one strike, then the second. Sparks flew as her weapon bent, groaned, and broke in half. She pivoted, using the butt end to slam into its jaw, then ducked as the plasma blade skimmed past her neck, slicing her comms unit in half. The buzz in her ear died instantly. She drove a knee into its chest, and the elite staggered back, only for a moment. That was all she needed. She drew the last round from her vest, an armor-piercing, experimental slug. Her fingers moved like they had 1,000 times in training. Load. Chamber. Breath. The elite charged. She pulled the trigger. The round tore through its visor, the glow extinguished in a blink. The body crumpled, sliding down the slope. Calla stood over it, chest heaving. Black Swan was broken. Her comms were gone. Her side burned like fire. But the relay tower was less than a mile away. And she still had the drive, the one recording every shot she'd taken, every elite she'd killed. The one showing the Council's so-called invincibles dropping to a human woman who'd been told she was just a footnote in their war. She climbed. The path was jagged, twisted with debris and the bones of old satellites. The tower leaned like a dying giant, but its console still glowed faintly, waiting. She keyed the drive in, fingers trembling. The screen flickered. A face appeared. Admiral Voss, one of the Council's warlords, stared from the grainy transmission. Surrender. Human. The Council will spare those who submit. Your resistance is... Kala interrupted with a dry laugh. Funny. You invaded our planet. You slaughtered our cities. And now you want us to submit because one sniper outshot your nightmares. Voss's eyes narrowed. You will die alone. Kala tilted her head. Maybe. But first, I'm going to let the galaxy see exactly what one human woman did to your best. So they know what's coming if they ever try this again. She hit transmit. The footage streamed, each frame a bullet, a moment, a truth they couldn't erase. Sniper angles. Helmet cams from dead elites. Audio from Council broadcasts. The mocking. The arrogance. Then the silence when she began hunting them. And finally, the slow, methodical executions of every ghost unit that came for her. Her name wasn't on a medal. But now it would echo in data streams across systems. As the upload completed, the tower shuddered. A shell hit the base, sending her sprawling. She coughed, blood staining her lips, dragging herself up. Evac wasn't an option now. The ship had probably left. Or it would soon. But her job was done. Or so she thought. A figure emerged from the smoke, Council armor, but battered, limping. One last elite. It raised a sidearm. Kala, with nothing left, raised her broken rifle. They stared at one another. Then the elite lowered his weapon. You transmitted it? He asked, voice coarse, filtered through a cracked modulator. She nodded. He stared a moment longer. Then it's over. Not the war, but the lie. And then he walked away. Kala watched, stunned. Her fingers clenched around the remains of Black Swan, heart pounding in the strange silence. Not all of them were blind. She sank to the floor of the relay, eyes to the stars now slowly revealing themselves behind the smoke. Somewhere out there, someone had seen what she'd done. And somewhere, someone would be inspired to take the next shot. Even if she wouldn't be the one to fire it.